Try to imagine showing off by putting yourself in front of a beach background or something like that.
We opened on a kid and his Coke bottle glasses on his computer emailing his idol classmate.
And all of a sudden, I feel like I'm watching an episode of The Big Bang Theory and their over-exaggerated geek stereotypes.
Unfortunately, yes, Leonard here is going to be our focus character of the episode, and I know he has an actual name, but hell of it, I'm just gonna call him Leonard for this review for reasons you'll see in just a bit. Anyway, the next day at school, Siki was having trouble setting up what I'm guessing is an iMac G3, or at least that's what they were using in Ryuki. Ompu asked if the Ojamajo could help, considering she saw them using a laptop all the time.
So what you're saying is that it's something that collects a whole lot of porn. Okay, even I have to admit that was low-hanging fruit.
Why, to impress Ompu, Leonard volunteered to set it up, which, if I recall, iMacs weren't that hard to set up. Still, it seemed to impress Ompu, and oh god, that face. He also took time to explain how emails work to his class, which, to be fair, it was still fairly new tech back at the turn of the century. In fact, I really liked this line as a result.
The more innocent years before everything.
Anyway, Leonard almost did get a one-on-one lesson with Ompu that was interrupted by Reika. This might have been significant, especially when it coincided with the introduction of the CD-ROM of Ompu that he kept on him at all times, which, yeah, that's not creepy at all. And more speculative foreshadowing would come when Kotake thankfully ran more interference between him and Ompu.
Yeah, maybe next time you'll have better luck asking her out to the Cheesecake Factory and their overpriced junk.
Later, Majorika tried to get Ompu to respond to the many emails they had gotten on their homepage, but like any celeb really, she didn't want to bother, which to be fair, is understandable. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you should only really expect a bot response from a company-run website, or in this case, a fairy response, as Hehe decided to just use the reply all function.
You hit reply all.
Sorry, I just really wanted to use that clip because I love that commercial.
However, she also threw in some kind of random stuff because this episode needed a plot, I guess. I mean, yeah, she is a trickster, but she had to know that this wouldn't lead to anything good. And we would quickly see the results of this the next day when, oh god. Yeah, I didn't think it was possible to find a character almost as bad as Oyashi, but this kid comes pretty damn close. Granted, the pedo toad still takes the top spot, as he revealed the reply Hehe had sent to all of Ompu's fans, which told them that she'd go on a date with them at the park, and thus asked the Ojamajo to take him there. They ran to Leonard along the way, and pointed out how he had never really interacted with Ompu at school.
Oh! Okay! In that case, you think you could elaborate?
Okay, so I'll say right now, I know how all of this is going to end, and to be fair, it is a great lesson, especially from a modern day perspective, but from that same perspective, I do have to say, holy hell, do I not like this character.
I mean, even considering how new emails were back then, I think it's still really creepy that this kid basically spammed his classmate whilst being in a room full of her merch. And maybe it is my own prejudice against the idol industry, but I just never like these stories where the central character is one of these overzealous fans, because I've heard the many horror stories that they ultimately lead to. And even though this kid is going to get a reality check by the end, I just don't think I ended up caring by that point.
Sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there, but when it comes to stuff like this, I do have to be a bit of a curmudgeon.
Anyway, with that out of my system, I again do think that this episode has some really good and even very relevant messages, as best illustrated when Leonard, as well as a hell of a lot of other kids, arrived at the park.
Oh boy, Skybite, would you look at all those catfish?
And of course, the simp stand are to question why there are so many sharply dressed gentlemen just gathered in one park for seemingly no reason at first. They did eventually ask, lead to one of the poorest excuses of a riot ever since.
I take a rig!
Oh, if only we knew the Pandora's box that awaited us on the interwebs.
The Ojamajo, of course, tried to get Ompu involved to try and resolve all of this, and not too surprisingly, she had already had her usual tactic on standby. However, Majuruka again tried to bar Ompu from overusing her charm, especially against such a large number of people. And fortunately, the Ojamajo were gonna make sure she did it the right way. For starters, they tried to calm the crowd down themselves, and they responded like how most angry crowds do. Thus, Ompu tried to use her usual tactic that does at least have the seal of approval from the Grand Ocean Queen.
Yes, I'm never gonna let that go.
But was stopped by Aiko, leading to, honestly, the best scene of the episode that kinda made up for the Leonard stuff. The two little witches had a bit of a confrontation of ideals, one who represented selflessness, and the other selfishness, though also.
なんでそんなに一生懸命になれるわけ？私がどうなろうとあなたたちには関係ないじゃない。
This is an interesting little detail, as while it seems like Ompu is just full of herself, maybe the truth of the matter is that she also has a bit of a low self-confidence.
I mean, it would be too hard to understand when we consider that her family life wasn't exactly all that welcoming with her constantly absentee parents, and of course the fact that she was a young celebrity. Going through stardom at that age has almost always led to negative results later in life, often due to a myriad of various psychological issues. In Opu's case, she seems to develop a loss of her own self-worth to the point that she has to rely on forbidden magic, both because she feels entitled to its benefits, and because she thinks she can't do a lot on her own in spite of her innate talents.
This show managed to work in a fairly believable personality disorder for one of its main characters. Now, if only Hollywood were that self-reflective.
Anyway, their talking caught the attention of the fans, who almost found them, but some convenient zawalding from Majuruka saved the day. And once again, Ompu almost took the easy way out, but the Ojamajo and the faces of her obsessed fans convinced her to do the right thing, which, to be fair, wasn't all that hard. After all she really had to do was explain that a rogue employee had misused company property, and that she apologized for the misunderstanding. Obviously, she left out the part that said employee was a fairy, and even offered to hold an impromptu meet and greet, which went over well with everyone, except for...
そういえば中田くんは？
Oh, boo-hoo. I feel so bad for the little stalker in the making.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I feel bad that he was Catfish, but he never really made any real attempt to get to know the real Ompu in spite of being in the same class as her. And sure, part of that was because his CD-ROM was a bad item, which yes, was kind of shoehorned in, but as even Doremi pointed out, not all of that could have been blamed on the item when the kid never even tried to take the initiative aside from on his keyboard. Now again, I really like this message that's especially relevant today. Get off the computer, or more likely the smartphone, and start interacting with people the old-fashioned way. Technology is great, and we shouldn't just reject it outright, but we also shouldn't let it become a total substitute for real interactions. I just really didn't like the character they had to use to deliver this message. Thus, I really didn't feel anything when the episode ended with Leonard finally saying hello to Ompu and then making this face. Yeesh.
Okay, so obviously, I really didn't care for Leonard either in this show or his other show, but putting him aside, I thought this was still a really good episode.
We got some great development for Ompu and further hinting at her eventual downfall, as well as some great messages about the dangers of the interwebs that are far more relevant now than they were at the turn of the century.
Thus, even though I really didn't care for the Spotlight character, I can overlook him for the most part and just appreciate the stuff that I really do think that a lot of us need to start taking more to heart these days.
Really, I don't think I need to explain why the lessons in this episode are important in a world where social media has become way too much of a priority for some. Granted, a lot of shows around this time were expositing about being careful about stuff like catfishing, but I don't think it's sunk in for some, so it's good to see here. More importantly, for this show specifically, it led to some further development for Ompu through just that little interaction with Aiko, and then that look on her face as she realized the weight of her actions when she tried to dodge her responsibility responsibilities. Good stuff that, for the most part, made up for the lackluster Spotlight character. I'm not kidding when I say this character felt like someone right out of the Big Bang Theory with their over-exaggerated geek traits to the point that it was really his only defining characteristic. As a result, I just couldn't get behind this one-note character and the fact that his arc concludes with him just saying hi to Ompu. Still, overall, when the lessons and character development are great, I can overlook one not-so-great character.
Tropical Rouge Precure is coming to an end this week, which of course means an overview is imminent. But before that, I think I want to cover some manga, or more specifically, some doujinshi. Yep, I know some of y'all are still craving some Yuri now that the season is ending, and since I still haven't found any listings for the Kamikita Fudago's manga, I think this will just have to do for now. Look forward to it, and until then though, for now my friends, and your account might have been hacked into, please provide your credit card number. Well, okay, my card number starts...